Hello and good morning on this Friday, October 27th, 2017. It is the Cam Rogers Show. I am your host, Cam Rogers, part human, part bird. I am wearing my Baltimore Ravens helmet right now in support of my guy, Joe Flacco, who took a really rough hit last night in that game against the Miami Dolphins. Kiko Alonso went right at Joe Flacco's head. Flacco looked dazed and confused and went out for the rest of the game. So, got to kick off the show with giving my thoughts for my guy, Joe Flacco, Super Bowl MVP quarterback. And we're thinking about you, Joseph, here at Chat Sports. At least I am, so please get better, friend, as we take you up until 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and a lot to get to on this program. We have some coaching hot seat discussions to get to. I am guaranteeing something. Somebody is getting fired after this weekend. I don't know who, but it's going to be one of these four people that I name coming up in the opening rant. Then at the 15-minute mark, we have McDonald of Sooner TV. Looking forward to that conversation with her. A big game for the Sooners as they take on the Texas Tech Red Raiders in what will be probably a high-scoring affair. Certainly was one last year, and the Sooners have slim playoff chances. We'll get her thoughts on their playoff chances later in the show. Then at the 30-minute mark, talking about 3 NFL trades that will happen before the deadline, 4 o'clock Eastern Time on Tuesday, Halloween, if you will. So I'll go through those trades. And then later, 5 NFL teams guaranteed to lose. This is going to be a new segment that I'm kicking off this week. I am giving you the locks, 5 of them, for this week in Week 8 for the NFL in terms of teams that are definitely going to lose. And then, of course, a little final word about perhaps a player coming out of retirement, pretty good wide receiver in his own right, so stay tuned, and I'll let you know who that is. But before we kick off the opening rant, friendly reminder to download the Cam Rogers podcast. We have a new logo now. It's me doing that stupid finger point that I like to do. And so be sure to subscribe, download, and please leave a review, 5-star review if you like me, 1-star review if you hate me, but you still watch, that's totally fine. Certainly leave a comment as well. And we thank you for following along with the show. Busy Friday morning here. I hope you guys have some big-time weekend plans, a big week in college football, big NFL Sunday coming up as well. So a lot to get to here within the hour. We want you commenting, reacting in terms of what your thoughts are about the topics that I discuss here, and we'll throw up the comments throughout the broadcast as we see fit. So with that, let's get into the opening rant here. Like I said, somebody is getting fired in college football or the NFL. I'm not sure which person it's going to be, but it's going to be somebody. And I'm going to go through 4 names here who I feel just may not make it out of the weekend. Let's start off with number 4, candidate to get fired, Mike Riley, head coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Look, there's a new AD in Nebraska right now. Sean Eichhorst got fired. Bill Moose is now the athletic director for Nebraska. May very well want a clean slate. And what really stuck out to me in terms of Nebraska's season, talking about football here, that loss to Northern Illinois in September was absolutely embarrassing, absolutely pathetic, and I think actually set the tone for the rest of the season. So the Cornhuskers right now are 3-4. Pretty much not going to get a bowl game, I don't think. There's no way they get to 6 wins with the way in which they're playing football right now. Mike Riley clearly losing control of this team. I feel that he is certainly going to see a fair share of rumors this weekend, if indeed the Nebraska Cornhuskers lose again, of him getting fired. And there's the buyout that you always have to consider. So it's $6.6 million buyout for Mike Riley, which is actually not as high as another coach that we will get to later, my number 1 candidate to get fired after this weekend. But I think the most significant thing is the changeover in Nebraska right now. And, you know, a lot of times, actually, I'm going to follow the same logic with another team, a professional team. But a lot of times when you have a new AD or a new GM, they want a new slate. They want to move on to a new chapter, if you will. And Mike Riley, part of the old guard, the old chapter. And Nebraska has struggled mightily, by the way, with recruiting. I mean, it's been tough for them to get players to go up there and play for this team because, one, they're not playing well right now. Two, they're getting a lot of bad PR because of the changes that are going on in the front office, if you will. So, Mike Riley, candidate number 1, or actually I should say number 4, we'll count you down in terms of the likelihood that this is going to happen. So number 4 compared to number 1, obviously number 4 less likely to get fired than my number 1 candidate. So Mike Riley there at number 4. How about number 3? Hugh Jackson, part of the LVP list here on Chat Sports, the least valuable player / coach list, if you will. Hugh Jackson, coach for the Cleveland Browns. 1-22 record as a coach. He's got a quarterback carousel that's getting absolutely ridiculous. In fact, Harris Rubenstein, my producer, said it on NFL Daily last night. Sound the clown music, the fair music, the carnival music, and that's what's going on in Cleveland at this juncture. So DeShone Kizer was the starter, then he wasn't the starter, then it was Kevin Hogan who was named the starter, then it was Cody Kessler for a little bit, and now it's back to DeShone Kizer. And DeShone Kizer, by the way, partying on Friday nights, not as bad as, say, Rob Gronkowski or Johnny Manziel, but the guy's not playing good football, and he's going out on Friday nights, and people are capturing it. Probably not a good look. I'm not saying it's fair or not, but at the end of the day, it's all about your image in some of these positions in media, in professional sports, etc. So DeShone Kizer, clearly not learning that, although he will be starting for the Cleveland Browns this week in London as they take on the Minnesota Vikings. But Hugh Jackson here, I thought that he was going to bring a no-nonsense kind of approach to Cleveland, where he really relished in Cincinnati. I mean, I thought he was a pretty good offensive coordinator. Got a little too cute sometimes with some of the plays with Andy Dalton in that offense, but coming over to Cleveland, it has not been really a seamless transition. And look, I mean, the Cleveland Browns have a lot of problems. They have a lot of problems in the secondary, on the outside at wide receiver, at running back right now. Duke Johnson hasn't really panned out. Isaiah Crowell is supposed to be that guy at the running back position. That has not really transpired in the way in which the Cleveland Browns had hoped. And the quarterbacks, I mean, you can always just harp on the quarterbacks. Yes, it's an absolute train wreck. And a lot of the blame has to go on Hugh Jackson because of the way in which he is handling these situations. Finally, left tackle Joe Thomas, one of the premier pass protectors in the NFL, gone for the year with a torn triceps. Really tough story to see. And that is only going to make matters worse for DeShone Kizer, worse for Hugh Jackson, and worse for the Cleveland Browns organization as they continue to lose games. I'm not so sure they're going to win a game this year, ladies and gentlemen, as we did have that weigh-in for you folks at home. What coach is getting fired after this weekend? Perhaps I didn't name one that is sticking out in your head. Or maybe I will name one that you are thinking about right now. So definitely throw in those comments. We'll be showing them throughout the broadcast. We're at that point, folks, where the tide begins to turn. The front office begins to get impatient. People start to lose their jobs. It's not like every day where you have the Phoenix Suns situation where a coach gets fired after like 3 or 4 games. In the NFL and in college football, usually it's at that midway point, and that's where we're at right now. Patience begins to wear thin. In fact, especially if it was already thin to begin the season, like with this upcoming coach that I'm talking about, which I'll get to in a second. But for Hugh Jackson, things are looking rough for him. So we got Mike Riley, Nebraska. We have Hugh Jackson, the Cleveland Browns. Coach candidate number 2 to get fired after this weekend, Chuck Pagano, head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. I will preface this discussion with saying that I am a big fan of Chuck. I think he was a fantastic defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. I love how he battled back from cancer and came back and coached a playoff game for the Indianapolis Colts a few years back. But at the end of the day, sometimes coaching situations begin to get stale. And this could be one of those situations. And this is also comparable to the Mike Riley deal where there's a new AD in Nebraska. Well, there's a new GM in Indianapolis. Ryan Grigson is no more. It's Chris Ballard now at the general manager position. Perhaps a new regime wants a new change. So the recent 27-0 shutout loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars was very significant in this regard. The Indianapolis Star reported something that is very, very interesting. So I'll read the quote for you guys. Quote, speculation about the job status of the Colts' six-year coach reached a fever pitch after Indianapolis's embarrassing showing Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars. A fever pitch. And for those who don't know, and I didn't know last night, I actually had to look up what the heck fever pitch meant. A moment of the turn, if you will, a moment of excitement, of impatience that there will be some sort of change going on. So Chuck Pagano of the Colts certainly is someone that we need to monitor going forward. He is my candidate number 2 to get fired after this weekend. And by the way, the Colts play the Cincinnati Bengals, a pretty darn good defense that probably will shut out the Colts back-to-back. Like, it's something that certainly can happen, and that very well could be the last straw for Chuck Pagano in the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, so Pagano's at number 2. Like we said, we want the comments flowing in. Who's getting fired across the NFL, across college football after this weekend? Jason chiming in. Ken Norton Jr., the defensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders. You know, Ken, that's actually a very interesting point. The Oakland Raiders have been very disappointing so far this year. Even in that win against the Kansas City Chiefs, they still gave up 30 points to Alex Smith. Good offense, sure, but a Kansas City Chiefs team that, you know, you could hold them to 17, 20 points without amazing defense. It's not a team that's going to light you up week in and week out, the Kansas City Chiefs. So Ken Norton Jr., very possible. I mean, outside of Khalil Mack, that front is not getting it done for Oakland. That secondary is a big concern, especially at the corner position. Wide receivers are having their way with Oakland's corners right now. It's a good comment there by Jason about Ken Norton Jr. We'll see if he can make it through as we go along in the season. Butch Jones has to go, according to Jeremy. You know, Jeremy, you're a smart guy, and I'll say that because my number 1 candidate to get fired after this weekend, Butch Jones, head coach of the Tennessee Vols. This guy and this team have lost 3 straight games in the SEC by a margin of 101-16. They looked putrid, hapless, lost against Alabama a week ago. Now they head to Lexington tomorrow to take on the Kentucky Wildcats, and if they lose that game, it is all over for Butch Jones. It's done. Goodbye. He's getting fired on Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, Monday morning, whatever it is. But he is my number 1 candidate to lose a job. Now, the buyout for Butch Jones, $8 million. And there's actually a clause in the contract, I'll read it to you folks, that requires Jones not only to seek a new job, but also report his quarterly income to Tennessee through the end of the deal. And if he doesn't report that quarterly income, the university's obligation to continue paying liquidated damages to the coach shall cease. So, even if Butch Jones does get fired, he's got to move his butt to get a new job and then report quarterly to UT. And if he doesn't, then Tennessee can essentially no longer pay him. Like, they have the ability to just no longer pay him. By the way, in the last 32 meetings between Tennessee and Kentucky, the Wildcats have won just once. And if Butch Jones makes that number 2 tomorrow, see you later. He's done for the Tennessee Volunteers. Okay, like I said, folks, somebody's getting fired this weekend. It's going to be one of those 4 guys. Guarantee it. That's the opening rant. All right, we're going to hit a quick break here on the Cam Rogers Show. Coming up on the other side, we have Meg McDonald of Sooner TV. We're talking a little OU, a little Big 12, a little college football playoff. Stick around to the Cam Rogers Show.
How are you, Cam?
Hey folks, Cam Rogers here. Welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show. We have Meg McDonald of Sooner TV, a Fox Sports network, and she has been heavily involved in OU. A big game for them against Texas Tech tomorrow. Meg, how we doing? Appreciate the time.
I'm good, Cam. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. A lot to talk about here. As I said, big game in Norman tomorrow. You know, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm thinking we're going to see a lot of points. What are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Well, if we base it off last year's game, I think you're right. But the defense, the OU defense, is pretty disappointed from that game last year. And they circled this game on their calendar for 365 days now. So they're trying to put on a show against the Texas Tech offense this week.
Yeah, it certainly should be a fun one, the air raid offense, if you will, for those Texas Tech Red Raiders. Baker Mayfield, of course, takes on the former team of his. For the final time, he's 2-0 against Texas Tech. Could you actually see an upset brewing? Because it kind of has been that type of season where, you know, who knows what can happen. I mean, I'm not even sure if the earth is round because there's just so much that has gone on in college football. Do you see an upset possible?
No. But the Big 12, you never know. I mean, I was at the Iowa State OU game, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my eyes even on the 4th and out where Baker Mayfield couldn't get it done. So I think they've had enough close games where they're pretty over the drama. They don't want the drama anymore. They're over it. They still are in the playoff conversation, but every single week is an elimination game for them.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I just can't see Texas Tech pulling it off in Norman.
Now, looking at the Big 12 in general here, Meg, of course, we're having the Big 12 championship this year for the first time since 2010. And I got to ask you about this. How important is that for OU in general, and then also just the Big 12 to make a college football playoff? Because you have to, of course, impress that committee, right?
Yeah, that's huge. And I think the Big 12 has been on the bad side of things when it comes to the playoff contentions because we didn't have a Big 12 tournament. And last year it came down to a Bedlam game, which was kind of weird because it was Bedlam, but it was also the Big 12 championship.
Sure.
So it just didn't really feel like a championship, though. So I think actually having a real game that's designated to send, hopefully, a Big 12 team to the top 4 here, I mean, later on this season, I think that's huge.
It certainly still seems like a toss-up right now. I mean, you got Iowa State in the fold at this juncture. There's OU. There's TCU. How do you like Oklahoma's chances to actually make the playoffs? You alluded to it right then and there that this is essentially an elimination game all the way out the rest of the year. Do you like them to get in despite that early season loss?
I still do. I do, and I think, I mean, obviously everyone had this TCU-Iowa State game circled on their calendars knowing it was going to be a huge game. No, I'm totally kidding. At the beginning of the season. But I still think OU has a shot. They have the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. I mean, Baker, how are you a Heisman candidate 3 years? Like, you are the GOAT. You are one of the best to ever play college football. So, yes, their defense has been a little iffy, and their offense, they kind of just play the hot hand. They don't have the stars like they did last year, but it's working for them so far. So I think they still have that edge, you know, like they're not complacent. Because they're fighting for these games. They're not just blowing people out like they normally do. I mean, the past, I want to say 4 or 5 games, the fourth quarters weren't like, we didn't know who was going to win, which is kind of unheard of when it comes to OU. So I still think they have that fight and that edge left in them.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at some of these games this year, and they have been like scary tight. Of course, most recently with Kansas State. And I've been interacting with some OU fans the last couple of weeks, Meg, and a lot of them want Stoops fired, defensive coordinator for OU. Has it gotten to that point where Stoops is perhaps on the hot seat?
I don't think so, but trust me, I've read message boards and Sooner fans are not happy. I mean, you can go on Twitter after a game and people are lighting him up. But they're still winning games. Like, they're still able to finish. So, yes, I think the defense has been holding the offense back in a sense, but they're still coming out with wins. Road wins are huge in the Big 12. So I still think he has some time left. I don't think he's doing that horrible of a job, but Sooner fans are a little spoiled in the sense that OU is always good. So I think he's okay.
Yeah, being from New England, I know what spoiled fans are like. Looking at you, Patriots fans out there. I got you. All right, Meg, let me ask you about Baker Mayfield. You talked about him, Heisman candidate, and you got Saquon Barkley, Bryce Love, all of these candidates in his way. How do you like Baker's chances to win the Heisman, especially if he continues to win games for OU like he has been, really putting the team on his back?
You know, I liked them better earlier on in the season because some of these stars have really showed up in the past couple of games. Once conference season really started, you have the Saquon Barkley and the Bryce Loves who have just put on a clinic when it comes to their offenses. But Baker is he plays with a chip on his shoulder even when he's a stud. You know what I mean? Like, he's always had that mindset. I mean, from starting as a walk-on at Texas Tech to a transfer to OU, you know, not playing and then playing, and now he's a star. And he's always had that edge. And he didn't even, I don't know if you know this, but he didn't even practice last week, the whole week leading up to K-State. He didn't practice once. He didn't throw until Friday morning, I believe. And still was nursing a shoulder injury and then came out and lit him up. So to me, mental toughness needs to go into it. Just his mindset. He's very charismatic. Like, the media, they love him here. Everyone loves Baker Mayfield. He's the star in Norman. So in that sense, I think there's so many things that go into a Heisman candidate. And this is his third run. Right. Come on, give the guy a break. Finally give it to him.
For real, it seems like he's a real blue-collar guy too, Meg. I mean, the way in which he came onto these teams as a walk-on and really fighting all the way to the top here and really having a fantastic season in his own right. We'll see where he falls as we go forward with the Heisman rankings. But let me ask you here. Open up the old crystal ball, if you will. Predict this game here. It's prime time. Texas Tech, OU in Norman. It's going to be rabid, crazy environment. What do we got? Give me a score prediction.
Okay, this is a hot take, but I'm going to go for it because this is what fans like. Fans they're comfortable with like a 21-24 game. If it's higher than that, the defenses were horrible. Or, and then if it's lower than that, there was no offense. And I just think like both teams are so aware that it was a track meet last year. I think the total stats was like over 1,700, which is ridiculous, or of yards, which is insane. I just think the defenses, both of them probably want to light each other up. So in that sense, I'm going 21-24.
Okay, big boy football, a little hard hitting. I like it. All right. Hot takes here on the Cam Rogers Show. Talk with Meg McDonald here of Sooner TV. Meg, from what I understand now, you were quite a star at Iowa State as a D1 gymnast. Gotta ask you here, what was our specialty back in the day? Give me a little bit about the time there.
I don't know if star is the right word. I was like pretty mediocre, but I was definitely vault and bars. Those were my two events that I was pretty good at. Not beam. I hated beam. Like, people who can do beam, I'm sorry, but it's scary. Like, they make it look like it's not scary, but it is terrifying.
Hey, it all looks terrifying. And by the way, I was a mediocre intramural quarterback back in the day in college, too. So, maybe we can kind of bond over that. But let me ask you this here, too, because I feel like doing the uneven bars, that's what they're called, right? Like, takes a lot of concentration. Like, I'm watching some highlights of D1 gymnastics, and I feel dizzy just looking at it. How do you concentrate and do something like that? I got to know.
I don't know. Like, I'm 3 years out now. And like when I look back at some of the highlights, I don't know how I did it. I really don't. Like I can't even imagine doing half of what I used to do now. Like I'd be way too scared. But yeah, I guess it took concentration. But when you grow up, I mean, gymnasts, they start when they're like 5. When you grow up in that environment, it's just kind of you go on autopilot and you do it. Like you don't have really an option to not do it. So when you don't have an option, you have to.
Maybe a few yoga sessions in for me, and I can give it a try. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe we'll broadcast that live here on the show. Meg McDonald, ladies and gentlemen, check her out. Sooner TV. She will be following the big game tomorrow for OU against Texas Tech. Meg, appreciate the time, and all the best to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Cam.
All right, there you have it. Many thanks to her for coming on the show. We're going to hit a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up on the other side, I am giving you 3 NFL trades that will go down before the deadline. Book it, pencil it in. Stick around for the Cam Rogers Show. Hey, welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show. By the way, let me be of the first to wish you all a very happy Halloween. I mean, that's coming up on Tuesday, right? And by the way, also, the NFL trade deadline is coming down on Tuesday at 4 o'clock Eastern time. So with that, I have 3 trades that will go down in the NFL. And I'm previewing them for you right now. So I'm essentially projecting what's going to happen. You don't even need to pay attention on Tuesday because I'm already going to tell you what's going to go down. So trade number 1. Jeremy Hill, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals, going to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a 5th-round pick. What is the reasoning behind this? Well, first of all, Jeremy Maclin is on his rookie contract right now, looks to expire after this season. The Cincinnati Bengals are ready to move on and really use Joe Mixon as the guy. If they are a smart organization, and many times they prove that they're not, they will be playing Joe Mixon as much as possible. Because Joe Mixon slows down that pass rush with the quick passes and using him out in space and screens like that. Jeremy Hill isn't that kind of running back. He's a bruiser. He's a one-cut guy. He's an A-gap guy. And that's something the Seattle Seahawks need. So the Cincinnati Bengals get a nice little 5th-round pick. Maybe they can attack that tackle position, which needs a lot of help right now. And for Seattle, it's been a running back wasteland right now in the last couple of years, really. Rawls can't stay healthy. He fumbles the football. Eddie Lacy should play right guard. C.J. Prosise has been struggling with an ankle injury of his own. So with that, bring in Jeremy Hill. Give Hill a new scene, if you will. Change of scenery is always good for players who seem to be struggling and get a little stale on a team. So with Mixon supplanting Hill, I think that would be very beneficial for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's going to allow them to concentrate on Joe Mixon and the fantastic talent that he can provide. And so that is a good thing for Cincinnati. For Seattle, they actually have a running back that can probably handle 20 to 25 carries. Rawls clearly can't. Eddie Lacy probably can, but he's going to average 1.7 yards per carry. And C.J. Prosise, he has just shown some good flashes. There's no doubt about it. And by the way, I want you guys throwing in your comments about these trades because I feel like they could bring out the best in the audience here today. So the situation for Seattle is bleak, and if you bring in Jeremy Hill, I think you'll have a refresh motivation to perform well. And with the Seahawks 18th in rushing, I think Hill can only make things better. Yes, Seattle's offensive line is a mess too. And Russell Wilson is throwing on the run like 90% of the time, it seems. But if Jeremy Hill could go to Seattle and slow down the pass rushes of opposing defenses and perhaps give Russell Wilson time on play action, that will make all the difference for the Seahawks in the NFC West. It'll make all the difference for the Seahawks in the NFC in general, and it may just make a difference for them to get to the Super Bowl this year. So Jeremy Hill hasn't been used much in Cincinnati, and of course you still have Gio Bernard out there in Ohio. So why not roll with Gio and Mixon for now and really see what you have out of Mixon, give him 20, 25 carries. And Seattle can now give Jeremy Hill 20 to 25 carries a game and see what they have out of him. It's more about saving Russell Wilson, actually, because if you have a good run game, you're going to slow down the pass rush because those defensive rotations will be more of the big guys, less of the speed rushers because you got to stop the run. You're not going to get a big pass rush on your play action. It's all a chain of reaction type of effect here. So Jeremy Hill to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for a 5th-round pick going to the Cincinnati Bengals. That's trade number 1 that will happen before this deadline. Trade number 2 that will go down. Martavis Bryant to the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's no secret that Martavis is fed up with the offensive scheme in Pittsburgh, fed up with the team, it seems, fed up with Juju Smith-Schuster calling him out on Instagram and then having to go delete the comment and then, clear up his tracks, if you will. And the poor guy wasn't involved in that hide-and-seek celebration last week. Clearly, he's not part of this locker room. Martavis Bryant to the Cowboys in exchange for a 7th-round pick. I don't think Bryant has any more value than a 7th-round pick. I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of promise for this guy going into this season, especially in fantasy football circles, especially out of Pittsburgh, where people thought that Bryant could be that legit number 2 opposite of Antonio Brown. It seems as though Juju Smith-Schuster, heck, Darius Hayward-Bay is catching the ball better than Martavis Bryant at this point. So clearly the Steelers don't need him. And you, on top of that, pile on the fact that Mike Tomlin benched Martavis for this coming Sunday Night Football game between the Steelers and the Lions. And Martavis Bryant actually said a quote to ESPN's Josina Anderson. Quote, "If things don't get better, then I got to go." And for the Dallas Cowboys, on that side of things, wide receivers outside of Dez Bryant have been pretty bad. Underwhelming, I should say. Cole Beasley has not been very good. Terrence Williams has not been very good. Bryce Butler has shown flashes, but not all that great either. They're all underperforming according to Pro Football Focus. They have below average grades. Dez Bryant isn't even an elite wide receiver right now according to Pro Football Focus. So if the Cowboys bring in Martavis Bryant, he is that legit number 2 guy opposite of Dez Bryant. Little Bryant duo. So you have Dez Bryant with his fantastic route running and his great catch radius. Martavis Bryant with a new scene. Remember the same logic with Jeremy Hill. Fresh scenery can really bring out the best in people. And Martavis Bryant is a fantastic wide receiver. People don't realize that. So you have Bryant on the deep post routes, on the fly routes. He can do some curls too. And then you see more holes in the linebacker and that second kind of layer of the defense. That linebacker area with Jason Witten getting it done at the tight end position. Had some great catches last week and more holes for him. Obviously big for Dak Prescott and that offense. So Martavis Bryant to the Dallas Cowboys, I think, could very well be the difference for Dallas to win the NFC East. Because look, yes, the Philadelphia Eagles are playing good football right now. That's great. That's good. But we have to remember they were playing good football last year too. And we brought this up on many of our programs here at Chat Sports. That they have played well before, especially last year, the Eagles have, and then they just kind of fall off. Will that happen again? It's very possible. And for the Dallas Cowboys, I think they see an opportunity. They see an opportunity this Sunday to beat the Washington Redskins with a beaten and battered offensive line, a star corner that is still ailing in Josh Norman, but probably will play, and a situation where they can go out and get a wide receiver that is pretty darn good, who doesn't want to be where he wants to be right now, and you have the prospect of perhaps winning the NFC East because of it. Dallas Cowboys defense looked a lot better last week with Sean Lee. That offense can look a lot better, too, if they bring in Martavis Bryant. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned Zeke Elliott and the fact that he can run the football effectively. And think about the play action that Dak can do, getting that football down to to Dez Bryant and to Martavis Bryant, too. It's a pretty deadly combination. So with the Steelers benching Martavis this week, it's quite clear they don't want him on the team. Big Ben did say that they want to get the football to him more. Maybe that's just quarterback speak. Who knows? But I think the Steelers are in a good spot with Juju Smith-Schuster and McDonald there at the tight end position, and you got Le'Veon Bell. They're fine. Martavis Bryant wants a change. Dallas Cowboys makes a lot of sense. Final point on this, Jerry Jones tends to have a high tolerance for character issues, and trust me, calling out a teammate on Instagram would not be one of the worst infractions a Dallas Cowboy would make. So, with that, Martavis Bryant going to AT&T Stadium, going to Jerry World, going to Dallas makes a lot of sense in my eyes. The number one trade that will happen before Tuesday, 4 o'clock Eastern time, Eli Manning to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's time, guys. Giants fans out there that are watching, time for Giants fans and the Giants organization to look to the future, to look at what they have out of Davis Webb, quarterback from California. Tom Downey, our draft insider, says he doesn't really like him, but perhaps you got to see what you can get out of that quarterback. That's point number one. Point number two, the Manning and Tom Coughlin connection. So, of course, Tom Coughlin is the executive vice president of football operations for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Eli Manning still very close with Tom Coughlin. It makes a lot of sense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, the Jaguars would be giving up a second and third round pick, respectively, to the New York Football Giants. Perhaps an opportunity for the Giants to look at a quarterback in that second round. Whoever may be available, maybe a Lamar Jackson, we'll see. But also an opportunity for the Giants to really zone in on that offensive line, especially at left tackle. So some good news for the Giants getting those second and third round picks. Good news for the Jaguars because they seem to be a quarterback away from being a legit deep AFC contender. And I'm talking about this could be the difference from the Jaguars getting a wild card and losing in the first round to going to Foxborough in the AFC Championship game, Eli Manning versus Brady. That is what headlines are made of, folks. And I think that Eli Manning, even though he has said that he doesn't want to play for the New York Giants, doesn't want to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars, part of him may want to look ahead to the future too and realize that, okay, we're rebuilding now. We're not winning a Super Bowl for some time. Maybe it's time for me to look at a team with a great front seven, Jacksonville, a great running back, Jacksonville, a great secondary, in fact, maybe the best in the league, Jacksonville, and an adequate offensive line, Jacksonville. So with that, here's what Eli Manning said recently. Quote, why people think I would leave or want to leave or the Giants want to trade me, I don't get caught up in the rumors. I don't think about them. I got one job, and that's playing quarterback for the New York Giants. That is the most cookie-cutter, straight out of the player textbook phrase you could ever hear. Because all that tells me is Eli Manning is just going by the playbook of being a good leader and saying that he doesn't want to leave. But there is always something in the bottom of your stomach, the pit of your stomach, if you will, where maybe, it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to go to Jacksonville. As we recap the trades that will happen in the NFL. Jeremy Hill to the Seattle Seahawks for a 5th-round pick. Martavis Bryant to the Dallas Cowboys for a 7th-round pick. Eli Manning in a blockbuster deal going to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 2nd-rounder and a 3rd-rounder as I continue this discussion with Jacksonville. Because it's clear Doug Marrone does not want anything to do with Blake Bortles. Do you recall when he said prior to this season that they don't want to throw the football very much. In fact, they want to prevent it as much as possible and run the football with Leonard Fournette, Chris Ivory, TJ Yeldon in that offensive line. What does that tell me? That tells me there's no confidence in Blake Bortles. And Doug Marrone, part of a new regime here, this isn't the Gus Bradley regime, Doug Marrone could very well say something to management, say something to Tom Coughlin, be like, hey, let's look at Eli Manning. Let's get him over here to Jacksonville and have him play for this team and take us to the AFC Championship game. Because if Eli Manning goes to Jacksonville, the Jaguars will go to the AFC Championship game. They will. You got Marquise Lee there on the outside, Allen Hurns. These guys aren't studs, but they're certainly better than the combination of Roger Lewis and Sterling Shepard. And one final point about Eli Manning. There is a no-trade clause in his contract. What does that mean? Essentially, Eli Manning has to waive that clause to be traded. So it really is all on Eli Manning at this point. And yes, he has said that he wants to play for the Giants. But let's just say management comes up to Eli and says, hey, there's an opportunity to go play for Jacksonville. We're ready to move on to a Davis Webb. Heck, maybe a Geno Smith, ? I don't know. Why don't you go play for Jacksonville, Eli? And maybe he will waive that clause and go ahead, play for Tom Coughlin. The Giants can give a look at Webb, maybe look ahead to Sam Darnold or Mason Rudolph in the draft. And things would be absolutely insane because I guarantee it, folks, we will have an Eli Manning, Tom Brady AFC Championship game, and it will be lit, as the kids say. So that is trade number 3 that will go down before the deadline. Reminder, 4 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday, Halloween, that's when the deadline occurs. So stay tuned. Those are the recap names there. Jeremy Hill, Martavis Bryant, and Eli Manning. All make sense to me. All not that crazy to fathom. There you have it. That's what's happening in the NFL before Tuesday afternoon. This is the Cam Rogers Show. We are transitioning into a new segment here. 5 teams guaranteed to lose in Week 8 of the NFL. I'll go through all 5, and by the way, I'll reveal the rest of my picks here. So let's get to number 1. Or actually, we'll rank them from 5 to 1. 1 being the most likely to lose, 5 being the least likely to lose. So team number 5, guaranteed to lose this week in the NFL. The Denver Broncos, the fraudiest team in the NFL, maybe outside of the Dolphins and maybe outside of the Falcons, but certainly a fraud team. Why? Trevor Siemian, 32nd among quarterbacks according to Pro Football Focus. Gross. Second reason, offensive line can't pass protect for Trevor Siemian right now. Third reason, that offense doesn't have an identity. They run the football effectively, but then they stop. That's what happened last week against the Los Angeles Chargers, 21-0 loss. The Broncos looked absolutely hapless, pathetic. And now on Monday Night Football, they're going to take on the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that certainly has been skidding. They've lost their last 2. But Andy Reid is pretty darn good coming off of bye weeks in general, and I will consider this a mini bye week because they played on Thursday Night Football last week against the Oakland Raiders. So Andy Reid, a little more time to prepare for these Denver Broncos. It's quite clear what you have to do to beat Denver, guys. I mean, even I can figure it out. You stack 8 in the box, you stop C.J. Anderson, you put your best corner on Demaryius Thomas, and you say, Trevor Siemian, beat us downfield, because he can't do it. He can't. He is not a good quarterback right now. He has shown flashes before, but it's not happening right now. And at the same token, because that offense isn't on the field so much, the Denver's defense is getting gashed. I mean, they're losing it, especially in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, etc., where the run game, the rush defense has not been that good, and Aqib Talib, even Chris Harris Jr., even these guys will have a lapse in concentration because they're simply out of breath. They're catching their breath, snap in and snap out. So for the Denver Broncos, the key for them, obviously, is to control the line of scrimmage and have a higher time of possession on the offensive side. But I just don't think it's going to happen. So team number 5, guaranteed to lose, the Denver Broncos against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs bounce back after 2 straight losses. And the Denver Broncos, by the way, are not going to the playoffs. Sorry, they're not. Team number 4, guaranteed to lose in Week 8, the Los Angeles Chargers. Look, I want to preface this by saying the Chargers are a good team, and I think they actually have a shot to get a wild card. Heck, even may be able to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC West. But I think the Patriots, this is more about the Patriots, they found their stride. That defense looked pretty darn good against, according to Pro Football Focus, the number one offense in the league in the Atlanta Falcons. So with that, I mean, it lends me to believe that the Patriots will do pretty darn well against the Chargers this week. Losing Hightower is big. We'll see if it has some sort of, shall we say, Sean Lee effect, where a Hightower is out and that defense looks lost, and there's just holes in the middle for tight ends and running backs. But I will lean on the side of positivity for the New England Patriots fans out there, that I think they're going to do work against the Chargers. I will say that Brady versus Rivers will be fun. We haven't had that rivalry in quite some time. In fact, you may recall 2006s, the 2007s of the world when the Chargers were actually good and they were consistently playing the Patriots. Hasn't been the case recently because the Chargers haven't been very good. But that run defense for Los Angeles is not good at all. And like I said, the Denver Broncos played them last week, ran the ball effectively, just didn't run it enough. So if you continue to run the football on the inside with Mebane there, who has played brutally for the Chargers, go right at them, and I think the Patriots will have a lot of success. Because if you sit back and throw the football 50 times, I think that's when Joey Bosa comes into the fold. I think that's when Melvin Ingram comes after the quarterback. Patriots tackles are all right, but these are elite edge rushers right now in Bosa, Melvin Ingram, according to Pro Football Focus. So I think if the Patriots run the football, which they will if they're smart, and I know they are, that means deadly play action down the field. Actually, the Chargers have pretty good corners, but when you're running the football well, sometimes that doesn't really matter in the secondary. So Chargers, number 4 team, guaranteed to lose. How about number 3? The Houston Texans coming off a bye. I don't think Deshaun Watson is ready for this. I do think he is ready for prime time. We've seen that. He's performed well. But is the team overall ready for the 12th man? And Seattle, not so sure. And I'm pretty sure that Deshaun Watson is going to struggle. I think that offensive line will have trouble in pass protection. That Seattle front seven is as good as it gets. Bobby Wagner is having an elite season at the linebacker position. And the Seahawks run defense overall is just great. And I think they're going to stifle Lamar Miller. And look, it's going to come down to Deshaun Watson. Can he beat Richard Sherman, et cetera, down the field with the Texans wide receivers? Not so sure. And look, Houston's secondaries play pretty well. Well, I should say one name has. Jonathan Joseph has had a great year corner, but outside of Jonathan, hasn't been very good for Houston's secondary. So Russell Wilson, I think, is going to look elsewhere away from Jonathan Joseph, who lines up on the outside. Going to be a lot of Doug Baldwin, all you DFS players out there, because he goes in the slot, and the Texans have one of the worst slot corners in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. So it could be a big Doug Baldwin game, and I think the Houston Texans are going to struggle in this one. Even coming off the bye, they're fresh, all that. I think the Seahawks are finally finding their stride. Here's the deal with the Seahawks. They're like Green Day, okay? Wake me up when September ends, because they struggle in September, and then once October hits, late October especially, November, cold weather begins, that's when Seattle becomes that playoff team, that Super Bowl team. And by the way, maybe after this game, they go out and grab Jeremy Hill. Just saying, just saying. So Texas, number 3 team, guaranteed to lose in the NFL. Number 2 team, guaranteed to lose. The Chicago Bears taking on the New Orleans Saints. Can Trubisky throw the ball more than 6 times, 7 times? Can he complete the ball more than twice, more than 3 times? I don't know. And I don't think the Bears have enough weapons on the outside. If the Bears actually do win this game, which again, it's not, I'm guaranteeing they're losing. Or excuse me, if the Bears win this game, they're going to have to get some sort of fluke play going, or the special teams makes a big-time play. Defense, maybe Eddie Jackson scores twice again. It's got to be something like that where Drew Brees just doesn't show up and the Bears defense makes a couple turnovers, scores a couple touchdowns, and there you go. But that's not a winning formula week in and week out. And I don't think that's going to happen this week in the Dome. I think the Bears will lose the time of possession battle against the Saints. The Saints have been running the football fantastically lately with Mark Ingram. All of a sudden, after Adrian Peterson and that circus that went on with Sean Payton, they've been running the football pretty well. So I think the Saints are going to have their way with the Chicago Bears this week. Speaking of fantasy, by the way, and DFS at that, take a look at the Saints defense. Pretty cheap in DraftKings and I think it makes some sense against Mitch Trubisky and a cast of misfits on the outside at the wide receiver positions for Chicago. So, one final point about the Saints, Cam Jordan is balling out for this team, having a fantastic year, and I think he's going to get after Trubisky. I think Trubisky's going to be under pressure a lot in this game, and the Chicago Bears guaranteed to lose in this one. By the way, hot seat conversation here about John Fox, perhaps. I don't think he's going to get fired after this game if they lose because of the turnover from Glennon to Trubisky, but something to keep in mind with John Fox going forward. He could be a victim of Black Monday after the NFL season is over, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about teams guaranteed to lose, and here is number one. The San Francisco 49ers battling the Philadelphia Eagles according to our Chat Sports consensus poll rankings, has the Eagles at number one in the NFL. C.J. Beathard has been struggling. That should be expected out of a young quarterback. The Eagles' front seven has just been fantastic, especially that front line. Brandon Graham has had a great year so far, an elite grade according to Pro Football Focus. Fletcher Cox, a high-quality grade according to PFF. Then you got Timmy Jernigan. Vinny Curry has played well as well. And that 49ers offensive line probably can't neutralize that pass rush. And the 49ers front seven on the other side, outside of DeForest Buckner, who's had a great year, by the way. Great year. But outside of him, it's not good. And I think Philadelphia will be able to run the football pretty well in this one. Carson Wentz is absolutely balling out. And that may be the difference in this one. So there you go. San Francisco 49ers, the number one team guaranteed to lose in the NFL this week. We do have a couple questions here. Who was number three? Number three was the Houston Texans. So I believe that was Damian asking there. So yeah, the Houston Texans, number three team, guaranteed to lose this week against the Seattle Seahawks. We'll revisit this segment next Friday, folks. I'll let you know what my record was. I won't be lying. Don't you think I will? So we'll revisit. Let's see if I go 5-0. I have a feeling I will. I'm thinking a clean sweep here, folks. So there you have it. By the way, let's get to the rest of the week. I do have a little graphic for you guys about the rest of the games here in the NFL. Raiders versus Bills, Colts versus Bengals, Panthers versus Buccaneers, Cowboys versus Redskins, Steelers versus Lions. These are the games I'm not so sure about, but I have made my projections. We got the Oakland Raiders and the Bills in Orchard Park. I actually like the Buffalo Bills to win this game, 23-17. I'm not quite sold on Oakland yet. Yes, they had a good game against the Kansas City Chiefs in Thursday Night Football not too long ago. But with that, divisional games can kind of give you that mischaracterization of a team where, yeah, you win a divisional game, but what does that really mean going forward? Where the Raiders have to go play a really good AFC team right now outside the division. That's going to be the true test for them, I feel. And I think the Buffalo Bills will effectively run the football with LeSean McCoy and Zay Jones. And the wide receiver position overall for the Bills isn't very good, but really it hasn't needed to be because that front four with Kyle Williams and Marcel Darius have been fantastic. The safety position has been very, very good, especially with Micah Hyde there and Poyer there at free safety. Really good safety tandem there for the Buffalo Bills. I think they get it done in the secondary. I think they get after Derek Carr in this one. And the real question is, will it be a Michael Crabtree? Will it be an Amari Cooper game? Because that's what it comes down to for the Oakland Raiders. It's either an Amari Cooper or a Michael Crabtree game. So we shall see going forward. Colts versus Bengals. I said it earlier today. There's a very good possibility that the Colts get blanked again and score 0 points. And that's when the Colts fire Chuck Pagano. So I think the Bengals actually will have no problem against this team in Cincinnati. I think they run the football well with Joe Mixon. Again, if they're a smart organization, they will run the football with Joe Mixon 20 to 25 times, and then they'll crush the Indianapolis Colts in this one, 33-14. Panthers versus Buccaneers. This one is interesting and really hard for me to predict because the Panthers are so Jekyll and Hyde this year, especially Cam Newton. But Cam Newton and his maturity problems really just make it hard for me to pick the Panthers right now. Next question. Cam, we get it. You're frustrated. You hate the media. So does Bill Belichick. But you know what? He answers every question. Bill Belichick probably hates the media the most in the NFL. And he's there answering every single question, even if it's a 2-word answer. In fact, Bill Belichick actually is entertaining in that regard. You, Cam Newton, you're just immature and you don't get it. And I hope you do at some point. That's why I'm not picking your team, by the way. I don't think Kelvin Benjamin, on a serious side, actually is very healthy right now. I'm not so confident in Devin Funchess at this point to be that guy to kind of replace Benjamin as he still gets a little more healthy. That loss of Greg Olsen seems to be wearing a lot on the Carolina Panthers right now. Meanwhile, Dirk Cutter really has to get the best out of this team because this is a talented Tampa Bay Buccaneers squad. You got Mike Evans. You got O.J. Howard, who had a great week in Week 7, and an offensive line that isn't great, but Jameis Winston is actually having a low-key, really great year. And I think Dirk Cutter needs to bring more out of that because it's not really translating into wins for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. They got to get more out of that defense, that front seven especially. I think this will be a low-scoring game between the Bucs and the Panthers. Give me the Bucs 17-10. Cowboys, Redskins. Now, if the Cowboys had Martavis Bryant, I'd probably pick them to win. But they don't yet. But they will before Tuesday. Remember, I guaranteed it. I have the Redskins winning this game 29-14. I get it. Trent Williams may not play in this one. Josh Norman still a little dinged up. I do have concerns about corner. But I think the Washington front is still good enough to get after Dak Prescott, maybe stop the run a little bit, and really force some third and long situations. This is one of those games where it doesn't really make sense to pick the Washington Redskins. I can't give you guys too much analysis in terms of why I'm picking Washington, but it's one of those NFC East games that I think will just go in Washington's favor. This one in Landover, Maryland, so keep that in mind. Kirk Cousins, I think, will bounce back in this one. He has played better against the Cowboys than, say, the Philadelphia Eagles, a team he has lost to twice this year. So the Redskins win a tight one. That one's on America's Game of the Week on Fox, 29-14, Washington. Sunday Night Football, Steelers and Lions. Give me the Lions in this one, 27-20 coming off the bye. I think the Steelers are a good team, yes. But we all know how Big Ben can be in some of these road games. And actually, you look at the splits, and he's actually pretty good in dome games. But still, I like the Lions in this one. Coming off the bye, they seem refreshed. I think they have a couple good pieces in the secondary, in Quinn, in Slay, that can kind of make some plays back there. Because Ben Roethlisberger is playing worse than he ever has. And that lends me to believe there's going to be some turnovers in this one. I think Pittsburgh loses 27-20. By the way, Steelers bring Baltimore right back in the hunt. So there you go. Picks for Week 8 in the NFL. Let's get to the final word here. We have about 35 seconds or so. Anquan Boldin could be coming back to the NFL. He wanted to focus on the social issues that are going on right now, and now it seems as though the Buffalo Bills are giving his agent permission to go out and shop Anquan Boldin, and he wants to be closer to his family in Florida. So, hey, Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ooh, that would be a deadly addition for the rest of the NFL if Boldin went to the Tampa Bay Bucs. Atlanta Falcons, maybe. They could use some help at wide receiver right now. Julio Jones not playing too well at this juncture, so some good possibilities there for Anquan Boldin to come back to the NFL. There you go. This has been the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Live. Remember, get the podcast version. Search the Cam Rogers Show. You'll see a little picture of me pointing my finger at you saying, hey, subscribe, download, leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you on Monday morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great NFL Sunday. We'll see you.